to make Hiller our president. Thank you very much.
Now, Gabby and I would like you to join us in welcoming to Arizona the man who can explain all of this stuff much better than we can. The 42nd President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton.
Happiness is to you, because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Here come bad news, talking this and that.
Whoa. Thank you. Thank you. So, first of all, let's give Gabby Giffords and Mark Kelly another big hand. Weren't they great? I want to thank our great friend Hillary and my great friend Dolores Huerta for being here and for a lifetime of devotion to human rights. She and Cesar Chavez started the farm workers movement 54 years ago this year. And she's still younger in spirit than I am and going strong. I want to thank your former Congressman, Ed Pastor, and his wife and daughter for being here and for her service. And Ruben Gallego, your current congressman, has been great for Hillary, and he's been a great representative. I want to thank him. I want to thank the leaders of the legislature who are here, the Senate Minority Leader, Katie Hobbs, the Assistant Leader, Rebecca Rios. 3 representatives are here, and Eric Bledsoe from the Phoenix Suns is here. So thank you all for being here. So, if I had any sense, I would just say amen to what everybody else has said and leave. But I came a long way to see you. And the other day I received in my email a remarkable article written online by a man who was John Favreau, who was President Obama's first speechwriter. And needless to say, we had a pretty tough campaign 8 years ago, and Arizona voted with us. I hope you will again on Tuesday. We need you. But look, so this guy had said some rough stuff, and he said, I did some things I shouldn't have done. They weren't particularly respectful, but when the president asked Hillary to be Secretary of State, and I saw her in the White House, she came up to me, threw her arm around me and said, John, get over it. I'm over it. We got work to do here. Let's keep on going. And so this man said something remarkable. He said, as important as it was after the financial crash in 2008, after the disappointment of the Iraq War, after the stagnant economy of the previous 8 years, to elect a new president, he said he thought this election was even more important. And I want to tell you why I agree with that. I don't like all these guys that always say every election is the most important election in your lifetime, but here's why this is important. And it has to do with the psychology of the election. You remember when the president gave his last State of the Union? Everything he said was right, by the way. He said, look, I know there are a lot of people still hurting and there are a lot of problems, but you Americans, all of us, we should be optimistic because we're the best positioned country for the future. For every young person here, I will tell you this. If I were 25 again, I'd like to be. But if I were, and somebody brought me one of those magic lamps, and a genie jumps out of the lamp, and the genie says, you can live anywhere you want when you're 50 years old. But you must decide right this minute. I would pick the United States in a heartbeat. And I'll tell you why. Why? As the president said, we are outperforming every other big economy. We've had 14 million new jobs in 5 years. That's the largest number since that other Democrat, whatever his name was president. And we've had, for the first time in the history of our country, more than 90% of our people have health insurance. And look at this crowd. We have the youngest, most diverse workforce of any major country in the world. We have the best system of education and training in the world. We have the greatest capacity in the world to generate electricity from the sun and the wind and other clean sources and liberate ourselves not only from the worst threats of climate change, but from any sort of dependency on things that will undermine our future. We have a strong military, a great diplomacy, and for all of our faults, most people in the world recognize that we are the one large power that does not want to control them, to manipulate them, to loot them, to twist their future. So, what's our problem? And why is everybody so upset? Number one, all of us, I hope, are upset by the ridiculous political gridlock in the country. Number two, people in both parties are upset by the fact that 80% of the American people haven't gotten a pay raise since the crash. So we got the jobs back faster than the historic average. I know this is hard to hear, but if you go back 400 years, every time there is a financial crash like the one we suffered in 2008, it takes 10 years to get over. We are beating the time clock on jobs, but we're lagging badly on incomes. You got all these young people with mountains of college debt. They don't know if they can repay it. They can't even move out of their parents' home. They're frustrated. And then all these young people in college who wonder if the same thing's going to happen to them. So the problem with the pretty picture that the president painted, which is true, I'm telling you it's true, is that a lot of people can't find themselves in the picture. Just today there's a story about hundreds of workers at the Carrier air conditioning factory, in two of them in Indiana, who have just been told their jobs are going to be eliminated in 2017. Not because they're not making money. The air conditioning division is making like $2.5 billion a year for Carrier. But because they want to move the jobs to Mexico so they can make more money, because the stock's not going up fast enough and the top management's bonuses got cut. Now, so you can see why people are hacked, right? You go to Appalachia. West Virginia has the second weakest economy in America and ranks first in the percentage of addiction to prescription drugs and heroin. The things are connected. You can say, well, this is the first time when non-college educated white working class people in middle age have their life expectancy going down, and the reason is drugs, heroin, alcoholism, suicide. But the truth is, a lot of these people are dying of a broken heart. So here's the problem. There are a lot of people who are mad and passionate and frustrated, and they want to do something, and the easiest thing to do is to lash out at some simple explanation for why they're in the fix they're in, instead of remain calm and think about how they're going to be part of that picture the president painted. Hillary's running for president so we can all rise together and all be in the picture. That is the right thing to do. Now, look, but you can understand why all this weird stuff's going on. It's tough out there for a lot of people. And most people don't have time to take a long course in economics. You know, I'm Irish by descent, and this is the 100th anniversary of the Easter Uprising, which led to the independence of Ireland from the United Kingdom and led to Northern Ireland staying in because it had a Protestant majority, and led to 30 years of violence until we were able to put an end to it when I was president. So, So anyway, we just celebrated the 20th anniversary of the beginning of the end of the conflict. So I've been thinking about this, and I read the other day, again, the poems that the great Irish poet William Butler Yeats wrote about that time. It explains this election. It said, when things fall apart, the center cannot hold. And second, this is the only line you remember, too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. It is time that we look to the future with more optimism, because we know we got a president who's got our back, who's going to tear down the barriers that are keeping too many Americans from participating in the future we want. And so look, we got to maximize the opportunities and minimize the barriers to shared prosperity and an inclusive society. And in order to do that, we have to have politics that works. Look, I spent 8 years as president, 12 years before that as a governor, 15 years after running a foundation that works in America and all over the world. We were here at Arizona State a couple of years ago with the work we do for university students. And here's what I know. Wherever people think their differences are to be celebrated, but their common humanity matters more, and they work together, good things are happening. Wherever people think that the only thing that matters is our differences, good things do not happen. Witness two amazing things in the United States Senate that prove that. First, the happy thing. 2 days ago, the Senate passed 94-1, the first serious effort to address this heroin and prescription drug epidemic that is cutting across America like wildfire. And they did it because it is a bipartisan killer. It's mowing down Republicans, Democrats, independents, people that never voted. It is just unbelievable. And last week, it was right before the Ohio primary, I was in a little town at the foothills of the Appalachians. And I watched every good and bad thing happen. If this town had been left out, they used a lot of investment programs, some of which I left them when I was president, to rebuild the physical beauty of this little town built in the early 1800s. It was amazing. So I looked at the last thing, which provided free housing to doctors so they would come and do their residencies in a place they would otherwise never go. And then I walked across the street where people were waving at me. First person I met is a woman who sold her car to open a drug treatment center. She introduced me to 3 recovering heroin addicts, to a woman who was widowed last year when her husband overdosed. So that's what's going on in America. That's why you got all this topsy-turvy. Lots of good, lots of bad, lots of anger, lots of anxiety. To grow together, first, what are our opportunities? Number one, Hillary believes the federal government should take the lead in investing a lot of money in a modern infrastructure and in making America the clean energy capital of the world. And I'll just give you 2 examples. The whole country was heartsick about what happened in Flint, Michigan, right? Except it turns out it's nowhere near the only community in America where children have elevated lead levels in their blood. Now, you just think about how many jobs would be created if we ripped up all the unsafe pipes in this country, laid down modern ones, and gave every child in this country a healthy future. And you can't export those jobs. And look, I do some of this work now. You get a good rate of return on that investment would be a great deal. Second example, every scientific survey says that America, not just in Arizona and Nevada and New Mexico and California, The country ranks first or second in the world in the capacity to generate electricity from the sun and the wind. If we would just get off the dime, we could create millions of jobs, liberate ourselves from the worst threats of climate change, set an example for the world, and we would never have to worry about paying for power again except to maintain our own facility. And you can't export that. And so, since Mark and Gabby were up here and Mark was in the space program, Hillary's moonshot is, let's put 500 million solar panels on home in the next 4 years, and in 8 years liberate every American from all kinds of energy, any kind of dirty energy. And just in case you don't believe me, there are already 3 states in America which get more than a third of their electricity from the wind: Minnesota, Iowa, and believe it or not, Texas. And when everybody says, all the enemies of all this say, oh, subsidies, blah, 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 Iowa has the lowest electric cost in the entire United States because they generate it themselves, and we should do it everywhere. Arizona could lead the country in this. I mean, how crazy is it looking? Arizona State University is generally regarded to be the premier university in America, maybe in the world, when it comes to solar technology. Why haven't you put up 500 million solar panels yourself? We can do this. We also can bring manufacturing back. We also can bring small business back. Too many banks are afraid to make loans in their communities. The Dodd-Frank bill, which President Obama signed, it's a great bill, basically does stop Wall Street from wrecking Main Street again. It has 2 problems. One is it doesn't cover, because of a fluke that happened in 2000, where the whole Congress voted to forbid the federal government from regulating hedge funds. And I don't think most of them knew what they were doing, but it was a dumb idea because now these hedge funds and billionaires can't put the system at risk. We've got to fix that. The other thing we got to fix is we have to return community banking to community lending in the community so that we can get more small business loans. Anyway, those are our great opportunities. There are barriers. Number one, we got to finish the work of health care. I hope Arizona will resume funding the Children's Health Insurance Program. Hillary started that program when she was in the White House. But what we need to do, it'll be easy once all these states governed by Republicans start taking the Medicaid program. It'll be easy to beat it at 95%, then we can close the gap. What we really need to worry about now is cost and quality. And Hillary's proposal basically is to do the following. 1, bargain the price of prescription drugs down so they're affordable. 2, reorganize the insurance market for individuals and small businesses so they're affordable and the co-pays and deductibles are less. To make the economics work, you just have to have bigger pools. 3rd, and this is the most important thing of all, we must keep working until every single American is enrolled in a health plan where you pay a flat fee for staying healthy, not pay for individual procedures. Every place in America, listen to this, every place in America, people are enrolled in these plans, the quality of health care goes up and the costs go down. We got to finish that. Second thing we've got to do is to make sure all our kids get the education they need. And Hillary believes that means every child's entitled to a properly funded public education from K through 12 and pre-kindergarten too. And that we ought to learn something from the countries that have the highest scoring school systems in the world and spend more time trying to help teachers become better teachers and principals become better principals, and less time giving so many tests. And she believes that we should have affordable college for everybody, which means for her, you can get out of any public university debt-free. Now, it's not something as paying everybody's tuition, but it makes more sense. Here's why. Under her program, middle-class kids and below would be able to get their tuition paid. And people, as their incomes went down, would get more and more support. And if they needed help, not just with tuition and books, but room and board and living expenses, they'd get that too. But people at higher incomes should pay their children's own way. There's no point in recycling the money you need from high-income people to put America to work by spending it on tuition. And every student who needed it would be given the opportunity to get 10 hours a week of work-study income. Now think about that. First of all, that won't kill anybody. You know, I did that all through school. It won't kill anybody. But it will hold costs down. If all we do is guarantee tuition and walk away and say we did the job, what will happen? State legislatures in the control, particularly the other party, will underfund the colleges and just keep running tuition up. We'll never catch up. Debt-free college is the best choice. And she favors, for people who already have debt, letting people fold their debt from whatever source into a mortgage-like document that would give every young person in America the option to pay that debt off for up to 20 years at no more than 10% of their after-tax income. Now think what that means. That means you can move out of your parents' house. That means if you got a job you took to make your debt payment, and there's a job over here you'd rather have, but it pays less, you can take it because your income payments will go down, your debt payment will go down. It means if you got this dream you've always had to open an organic bakery and you want to borrow $50,000, you can now go to the bank and get it, and it won't count against your credit score. This is the single most important thing we can do to liberate the futures of so many young Americans. So, there are other problems. We need prison reform. There are too many young people in prison for too long for nonviolent offenses. But as Hillary pointed out, if you just let them out, they'll just come back. You have to have education, training, job placement, and non-discrimination against nonviolent offenders in the job market so that they can rise again with all of us and we can go forward together. Another barrier we have to tear down is not doing enough for places that have been left out and left behind. The lowest income Americans with the highest poverty rate are still on Native American reservations, more than any other place. There are places predominantly African American in South Carolina where we campaigned, and in the Mississippi Delta in my home state, which have had poverty rates of 20% or more for 30 or 40 years, and which have always had unemployment rates 10% above the national average. Wherever they are, without regard to race, people should get extra incentives to invest in those areas, to put people back to work, and we should pay to train the people to do the jobs of tomorrow. That's Hillary's position. Now, we also have got to have immigration reform. Look, Hillary, I don't know if you've seen the ad they've been running with that little girl, the student. It's wonderful, isn't it? That was not produced. That just happened. And we happened to catch it on film. that young girl goes up and says, I'm so scared. Are they going to send me back? Are they going to send my parents back? Will I be alone? And Hillary says, you let me worry about that. You go back and be a good student. Tell your parents to do a good job. I think, look, I believe that Congress made a mistake not to pass immigration reform several years ago when Hillary voted for it and Senator Kennedy was behind it. We had broad-based support, and it was killed. But President Bush would have signed it. That's before the Republicans decided that they wanted to send everybody home. I can't figure out whether they're going to send everybody home before or after they build the wall. It'll take longer for them to go home if you build the wall first. But look, we're laughing, but this is not funny. This is not funny. The places in America which are in trouble because they have lost jobs, lost investment, and we haven't done enough for them. Not because somewhere else, halfway across the country, America is being strengthened by the diversity and youth of our workforce. Hillary wants to keep DACA in place and keep working. So, and look, Mark and Gabby were right. We need a whole spate of law enforcement reforms. We need police reform. I'm sick of looking at these films of people being shot, right? So it's fairly straightforward when people have to wear these video cams. You need to put the films in a place where the people who are being filmed are not in control. That's pretty obvious. We need to do more training. And we may need to do what happened when I was president. We may need to have a new police program so we can have more police officers, but they look like the people they're policing. And instead of riding around in military-like vehicles, they're actually walking the streets, getting to know people, become friends with them, getting to trust people. Look, we need that. And we need this gun safety legislation. I'm so proud of Gabby Giffords for what she's done. And I'm proud of everybody else who's worked on this. But I know a lot about this because Hillary and I lived together in my home state of Arkansas for 18 years. And I remember one time, when the NRA used to be able to behave in a sane way. And we one time had a huge property dispute. We had all these retirees moving into previously unfenced lands, and they wanted to put up fences. They were middle-class people. And our hunters had always hunted the land in deer season and, all the other seasons. Wasn't in the duck area, but everything else. And we were about to have, unbelievable violence. And I got in touch with the NRA and I said, look, we got to be able to cut a deal here. This is crazy. And they worked with me and we ended all the problems. That's back when they believed that they had a public mission instead of when they believe now that their number one job is to make more money for the corporate gun people every year. And so here's what I want to say. Hillary thinks, first, there's a Supreme Court decision that says we all have a right to keep and bear arms. She thinks everybody should have the right, if they're properly trained, to have a gun for hunting, for sports shooting, and for personal safety. There's a lot of people who live in Arizona and Arkansas who are more than an hour from the nearest law enforcement. On a good day, under the best circumstances. No one blames anybody for wanting to do what is necessary to protect themselves. But it is not too much to ask people who value their gun rights to show a little flexibility to save the lives of all these kids that are being killed by people who never should have had the guns in the first place. And that's all we're asking for. Look, and there are basically three problems. I saw your famous Arizona sheriff. Did you see? He was on a town hall meeting the president had on CNN. And he got up and basically said what I've been listening to all my life. Basically he said, we have messed this up so much now you can't fix it. Because there are so many guns out there, it wouldn't make any difference, right? That's what they said to me when we passed the background check law in 1993. That's what they said. And here's what happened. While I was there, 1 million felons, fugitives, stalkers, and domestic abusers couldn't get guns. What happened? Did every murder cease? No. But we had a 33-year low in the murder rate, and listen to this, a 46-year low in illegal homicide gun-related deaths. A 46-year low. So when these people tell you that it wouldn't make a difference, they're just wrong. We got evidence. It did make a difference. Will it solve all the problems? No. But if that were the rule, we wouldn't have child restraint seats or seat belts or speed limits, or we could all just text away while we're driving. Because somewhere, someday, something tragic will happen in a car, no matter what you do. This is crazy. And I believe she can convince enough people in this country that she has no intention of seizing lawful gun owners' guns, and she believes they're good people, and she believes they wouldn't mind waiting a little while so we can close the gun show loophole, so we can close the online sales loophole. There was none of that when I was president. And so we can deal with a factual problem that the NRA says they agree with. They say we need more mental health. The problem is we do not have a national, central, automated system on mental health records. So if a background check is not completed in 3 days, it won't kill anybody to wait another 48 hours or so to find out that they might be selling a gun to somebody who's about to go out and murder a bunch of innocent people. Please don't do that. That's all she wants to do, and it is worth doing. So, now, there are lots of other things I could mention. Hillary, the only place where she actually does spend lots more money than her opponent says he's going to spend is putting young people to work. The youth unemployment rate is too high, and they need extra training right now for all those who don't want to go to a 4-year college. She is the only candidate you can vote for who generally has been praised for A, being specific, more specific than all of her opponents, and B, telling you how this stuff could be paid for. Because it's really important. And finally, she is the only person who said we not only have to raise incomes and reward people who move their plants to America instead of taking jobs away, we have to create a climate where everybody can get a job, not just former inmates. See this fellow with this LGBT for Hillary sign there? Hold on a second. Okay. Here's something I bet a lot of you don't know. The gay rights movement is the fastest moving civil rights movement in my lifetime. But the Supreme Court has said marriage is legal, but you can get married on the weekend and get fired on Monday because you don't have any job protection. Every American who's willing to work hard and do a good job deserves the protection of that job. Now, the other thing I would tell you is, I talked a little about small business. Don't forget the other place where we're really lagging behind the world. We've always been in the top 10 in the participation of women in the workforce. We are no longer in the top 20. Why? Because we don't have equal pay. We're one of only 7 countries in the world without paid leave, and we don't have affordable child care. She proposes to fix that, and she's got specific plans to do it. But the idea is that we should all rise together and we should all live together. Which brings me to my last 2 points briefly. In order to do that, we got to govern together. That's why this Supreme Court appointment is so interesting. On the same week that they voted 94-1 to do something about this drug and heroin problem, because it's killing everybody, they still haven't decided whether to give a hearing to Judge Garland, whom I appointed to the Court of Appeals. This guy was confirmed 97-0. They loved him when I put him on the Court of Appeals. And they loved him because he was in charge of the prosecution of Timothy McVeigh, who killed all those people in Oklahoma City. So, why don't they want to confirm him? Because they like having a 5-4 lock on political decisions. If there is nothing else, hear me, this country cannot afford to have a very far-right Congress, a very far-right president, and a far-right Supreme Court when it comes to political decisions. They gave you the Citizens United decision, which basically says the billionaires and the minimum wage workers have equal rights to spend whatever they want on politics. It hung a for sale sign on the door of our democracy. They gave you the voting rights decision, which has led to a huge effort to disenfranchise African Americans, Latinos, the frail elderly, young voters, you name it, all over the country. We can't live together if we can't govern together, if we can't argue civilly. You know, every now and then I get a protester at my rallies now. And I guess it's maybe just being an older, happy grandfather. But our people will start booing him. I'll say, no, let's hear him out. And I say, sir, I want you to be able to say what's on your mind, but I want you to listen to my answer. Right? That's fair, don't you think? I have yet to have the first one that didn't have to be carried out because they were afraid to hear the answer. We can't be like that. We can't be like that. Nobody's right all the time. So, the final thing I want to say is we are living in a time when national security is a domestic and an international issue. Look what happened in San Bernardino. Those people were converted over the social media. We are fighting a battle inside the brains of billions of people. So Hillary says, look, I've had experience on the Armed Services Committee in the Senate and the Secretary of State. I know we need a strong military and a strong diplomacy, but we also have to build a world where we're all the time trying to make more friends and fewer enemies. Because you cannot kill, jail, or occupy everybody that might get converted on the social media. Therefore, she has been, I'm very proud of this, the most outspoken candidate in either party in saying this idea that we are going to demonize Muslims and keep them out of America because of their religion does not make a lick of sense. It is dangerous. It is dangerous. And look, I know you can say I'm biased on this because I live in New York if you want. But I know the overwhelming majority of Muslim Americans love this country, came here because there was more freedom, came here because they didn't want politics interfering in their religion, came here because they wanted their children to grow up in a place where they could follow the admonition of the Quran that Allah put different people on the earth, not that they might despise one another, but that they might come to know one another and learn from one another. And I could give you 50 examples, including employees at my foundation. This is crazy. So that's my argument. She's the best qualified person to be president. She's got the best ideas, and she's the only person running who's actually said how they would all be paid for. And she spent a lifetime as a change maker, and everything she'd done since we moved to Washington and she was First Lady, then she was a senator, then she was Secretary of State. Every single thing she had Republican support for. And anybody who thinks that we're just going to miraculously show up in Washington and stomp the brains out of everybody else that disagrees with us has not been paying attention to unfolding events. I mean, look, why I said what I said about the children's health insurance program is this. We got beat. I tried to pass health care, remember? And when you hear other people say they're going to do it, remember this. Since World War II, no major health care reform has passed without 60 votes in the United States Senate. For one brief shining moment, we had 60 votes without a vote to spare. That is the only reason the Affordable Care Act passed. We better not put it at risk. We better not put it at risk. And so she got beat. She didn't give up. We started working, and she worked with Senator Kennedy and others. They passed this children's health insurance program. There are 8 million people insured under it. When your state stopped funding it, and it's a good deal, makes people healthier, gives parents less time off, less worry. I mean, it's a great deal. You all of a sudden became the third highest ranked state in the country in percentage of uninsured kids. You don't want that. But anyway, there are 8 million kids. It's a big part of the Affordable Care Act. And we put it in the Balanced Budget Act, so 75% of the Republicans voted for it. She went to see the Republican leader, Tom DeLay. He disliked me more than anybody else in the House. He was their enforcer. She said, now, Congressman, I know we don't agree on much. He said, do we agree on anything? He said, yeah, you love your kids, don't you? He said, oh, Hillary, what's that got to do with anything? She said, for all of our differences, I know your children are adopted, and I honor you for doing that. And the foster care rolls in America are bursting at the seams, and children are aging out of foster care. No place to get any education, no place to get a job, no way even to have money to live on, and it's because people are afraid to adopt children who are no longer infants. And they're afraid to adopt children with special needs. So she said, Congressman, let's work together, give people a whopping tax credit. You like to do that, you're a good Republican. Give them a tax credit for adopting non-infant children and give them a bigger one for adopting children with special needs and provide other support. All I had to do was sign the bill, but by the time I left office, there had been an 80% increase in the number of children adopted out of foster care. She always makes something good happen. Always. She had to work to get money out of a Republican president and a Republican Congress when 9/11 happened. And then when Katrina happened, it affected all red states, remember? Except for a little bit of Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. Trent Lott, the Republican leader from Mississippi, got up on the floor of the Senate and was practically crying. He said Hillary had done more to help the people of the Gulf Coast area than any member of either party in either House of Congress who didn't live on the Gulf Coast. And he thanked her. And she said, what kind of American would be I had? You didn't ask us what our party was when we went through 9/11, and you were not to blame for Katrina, and we did it. That's what they say when she's not running for office. I know they've been mean to her for 4 years. You shouldn't pay a bit of attention to it. They're being mean to her because they don't want to run against her. Because they know she'll be the grown-up in every room and she'll make people do good things. And that's important. But look, we met 45 years ago this month. And I was in awe of what she knew and the innate sense she had about how to do things and how to get people together. 45 years ago. I didn't get married. We didn't marry until 40 years ago. Seemed like day before yesterday. And in one of my entreaties, I think I asked her 3 times, I said, you know, I really do want you to come home to Arkansas with me, but you shouldn't do it. And she said, that's not a very good way to make a sale. What are you talking about? And I said, Hillary, you know, my generation, I identify with a lot of these young people that have been for her opponent. We wanted to end the Vietnam War, advance civil rights, and reduce poverty. And some of us thought we could do it day after tomorrow, and others were willing to spend a lifetime doing what had to be done. And I said, you're the best I ever saw. I know all these other people our generation. You're the best change maker. You have this innate understanding of how to get to the heart of something, how to get it done. You should go home to Illinois and run for office. She burst into laughter. She said, are you kidding? You think anybody would ever vote for a pushy woman like me? I could never be elected to anything. She came to Arkansas. Before she came, she'd worked to get teenagers out of adult jails in South Carolina, worked to take tax credits away from segregated academies in Alabama, worked to register voters in South Texas, Hispanics who had long been citizens and long been systematically shut out of the political process. And she came home and worked in the Ozark Mountains to give poor people access to the legal services that they had never had in their lives. She is always making something good happen. And I'm just telling you, I know why people are mad, and I know when they're frustrated, but we can't do the wrong thing now. Finally, we're in a position to rise again. Finally, we're in a position to find ourselves in the picture President Obama painted in the State of the Union. And that's why I hope between now and Tuesday, you will talk to every living soul you can, get every living vote you can, and make sure Hillary wins Arizona. God bless you. Thank you.